Arnie Holder from Bowling Green, Kentucky. This is a crash course on Gameboy sound and music. I've been involved with the chiptune and chip music scene for several years, and a lot of that since the early 2000s has been based around mostly Nintendo hardware, and especially the Game Boy. I love this theme because it's next generation, so sorry for the tackiness. So the original Game Boy DMG-01 was released in April 1989. This guy. It has a Z80 CPU with integrated sound generation and stereo output, which is significant at the time, with everything else at that point being mainly mono or at least a single hardware output. The sound capabilities are 2 square wave generators, one with pitch sweep, one PCM 4-bit wave channel, which the Game Boy itself doesn't have any synthesis capabilities. It's just arbitrary waveform that has to be input from cartridge or from software. White noise, which is shift register noise, and the console itself has an audio input pin that has never really been used, although many have tried. It's very crude and unfortunately hasn't been exploited very well even today. So it wasn't until 1998 that there were commercial Game Boy sound tubes available. The Game Boy camera, I don't know if any of you remember this guy. It had a simple 16-step sequencer called Tricky H, but although it wasn't very useful for song composition, it did give you access to 3 of the hardware channels, both square waves and the noise channel. So it was really interesting as an experimental tool, and to hear what the hardware could be capable of in a really limited one-loop kind of way. The next thing that came along in 2002, Pocket Music. This was actually for the Game Boy Color line. It gave you access to all 4 hardware sound channels, the pulse waves, the noise, and then it had built-in pretty large selection of samples, low-quality samples of kick drums, guitar riffs, etc. They were very low quality, and the output was not so great. It's a simple step sequencer. On the right, this is the overview. Over there, that is an example of what's inside one of these. So a measure or a phrase. Yeah, that's up. So then now, actually going back a little bit, when the homebrewers got involved, Nanoloop was first. It's a more of a sequencer, MPC, drum machine style thing. And Johann Kotlinski's Little Sound DJ is more of a Pro Tracker, Optimed derivative. All of these came out pretty close together, late 90s. There was another at the same time that development didn't last very long on, but it was called a Carillon editor, and it was a lot more of a demo tool rather than personal song composing software. It could actually produce a .gb file, which was similar to a self-contained ROM. So all your composition could be loaded directly onto a cartridge and played independently of the editor. And this was used for the handful of demo scene Game Boy productions that were done. So first one I want to talk about is Nano Loop. Like I said, it's a 16-step grid sequencer. It still is released on custom cartridge hardware. And the custom cartridges, didn't bring one up here with me. There's been several different versions over the years, and on different cartridges there were different enhancements added. The audio input I mentioned, on one version it was used to add a fifth channel square wave, which was actually generated on the cartridge and sent into the Gameboy hardware via that audio input pin. Other things like an LFO is accomplished on the cartridge hardware and then controlling the console. So this is what Nano Loop looks like. This is the current generation of cartridges. They're pretty interesting. They're just a really thick PCB. Everything's embedded. It does have non-volatile RAM embedded in there for, I can't remember the maximum storage capacity. But on the right there you can see each hardware channel is identical to this layout here. You have 16 steps. Each step, variety of commands and effects can be input. Little Sound DJ is available as a downloadable ROM, which has to go onto a flash card, which just look like regular cards with just like this. The ones that are available today just have a USB input, so they have a card flasher actually built inside, non-volatile RAM, and for the size of the files that you're creating, really big storage capacity. Like I said, it's a Pro Tracker style derivative interface. It can play, you can load custom audio samples. It comes with a range already as part of the software. And it has another thing I didn't list up here. Another feature of LSDJ is its synthesis engine, which is not a hardware feature. Like I said, it's something that's accomplished in the software and loads your synthesized waves directly into the wave channel. So this is its layout, just two different color schemes. This is the overview. You can see each column represents a hardware channel. Pulse 1, Pulse 2, wave, noise. The 00 that's highlighted there, this is all in hex. The 00 that's highlighted there is referred to as a phrase. And on the right-hand side, this is what, if you zoomed in, this is what's contained in that phrase. So these are the notes of that particular phrase. And then in the instrument column there, see 01, 02. If you zoomed in again, you would be in the instrument creation page. So flashcards are great, hardware is great. It's a little bit hard to get a hold of, and they're getting older and starting to fail more often than not. So emulators are wonderful. They're available for pretty much any platform you can think of. BGB being my emulator of choice. It's available on pretty much everything. About the only platform that you may not find a suitable emulator is iOS, and I'm assuming that's because of copyright decisions. I don't know, I don't have any Apple devices. They may exist. Here's some examples of the current generation of flashcards. The one on the right is the newest one. It's straight USB compatible. You don't need any software at all. It just works like a flash drive. it does all the translating and formatting internally. This is the previous generation. It's also USB connectivity, but it has a flasher program that has not been updated since WinXP, so it's getting very hard to use with newer, with any kind of 64-bit or newer operating system. All right. So I'm going to switch over. This is BGB. And this is just a Gameboy emulator. This is, you load in exactly the same kind of files that you would load onto your flash card, onto this guy. Really loves that noise. Here in a minute, I'm going to show you give an example of do a sound comparison between hardware and this emulator. Just got my gamepad mapped. So really, to me, I'm going to do a little aside here. To me, one of the things that is just as significant as the development of the sound tools for an outdated 8-bit console is the interface that was developed to access it. So the Game Boy only has D-pad, 4 buttons, that's all you got. So being able to quickly and easily navigate to, through many screens, many options, the key combos and the format, it's so easy to pick up, and once you grasp it, it's so fast. A lot of times I wonder whether it's the interface that I like or it's the hardware that I like. Because never having to look away, never looking at your keyboard, never trying to find your mouse, it's just like anything else, just like gaming. Second nature once you learn the key combos. It's extremely fast. So, okay, like I said, this is a full song that you're seeing in front of you here. This is by an artist named PhreakNIC. You go to the load screen. So here's the songs that are part of this particular save file. One of them is by an Australian artist named Aborta Fashion, and then these two are PhreakNIC. So I'll just choose from my save file. And I'm just going to let this play for a second because I like this song. Navigate into each of these phrases. See the notes as they're playing. So that's a full composition that's using all of the hardware channels. So I'm going to go in, first of all, to the first pulse channel. This is PU1. This is the square wave channel that also has pitch sweep capability. So within, let's see, these are chained. This is the song screen. This is your farthest back overview. If I go into this chain, here I have 4 phrases. That's like measures. You can think of it like each of those phrases. If I zoom in again, here's the note screen that we saw before. And then if I go over here in the instrument screen, in this particular phrase, he's got 2 different instruments alternating, 00 and 01. So if I go into this one, this is the first pulse wave instrument. So these are, you can see the options here. You have a volume envelope, duty cycle, has 4 options, but really only 3 pulse widths. You got, what is that, 12.5, 25, and 50, and then 75. You can assign it to either the left, right, or both output. Length, this is the pitch sweep parameter, vibrato, some tuning options. Pulse 2 instruments have the exact same screen minus the pitch option. I'm going to skip over the noise first. Noise channel. Again, you have volume envelope, output, length. Shape is the filtering of the shift register noise, and there are 2 different modes, one that's tonal and one that's white noise. And then here in the wave channels, where usually most of the really interesting stuff's going on. So here, volume, output, vibrato again. This is a synth instrument rather than a sample instrument. If I go up to the synth screen, and see I can choose from the bass waveform, filter type, resonance or width, a couple of distortion options, and then these are beginning and ending settings for the filter and the phase, and the software will interpolate over 16 waveframes between this beginning and end. So to edit, once I have my instrument defined, you can just place notes, change octaves, cut, paste, and all of this is going on just with combinations of the D-pad and the A and B. Cut, paste, navigate, up, down. It's very few options, but it's extremely fast. Let's see, let me switch to a different style song here.
Yeah, what do you use start and select for?
Excuse me?
What do you use start and select for?
Oh, start is in this particular software. Start is start and stop. Select is used in combination with other buttons for navigation. For instance, select up, down will change screens, things like that. A lot like a shift button.
Is there a difference between the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color as far as hardware-wise?
Game Boy Color has about twice the processing power, and the sound, just due to the way it was built, the sound output is tonally a little different. It's not nearly as bassy. What's interesting is a lot of LSDJ in particular wasn't really developed until the Game Boy Color came out, and these guys started to feel like there was enough processing power there to do something like this. Once they developed it and it started being used, then they kind of went back to the older generation for the sound quality. It's just a beefier sound. When it comes to an emulator, it's kind of irrelevant.
So does this program then work on both?
Yeah, on any generation.
Hardware-wise,
Mhm.
works on this generation?
Up through any that will accept the original Game Boy cartridge. So all the way up through SP, Advanced SP. Before I go any further, so I've covered what these hardware channels are. I'm kind of navigating. But I mean, drive the cursor around. If I want to change a value, hold down. Like that. Cut, paste, and then select. That's like zooming in. Zoom into the phrase. Zoom into the instrument. You also have wave tables. So, I don't know if I want to get into ticks and speed, etc. But the way that all these commands are being processed is on ticks, is like the smallest step. So now that I've zoomed in from the song to the phrase to the instrument, and now into a table for that instrument, I'm all the way down to the tick level. So you see how much faster all of them get. That's not a good instrument example. But the cursor here will be moving, let's see, what would that be, 16 times faster, because each of these 16 steps is a fraction of one of these. So that's the level of granularity that you have here. You can place commands on every single processing step. And that's where a lot of the power of a tracking program like this, you can get so much out of a small processor by being able to zoom in a very small step like that. So that's abortifacient from Australia. A lot more basic, a lot more aggressive. There's a lot of variability that you can get out of all four of these channels. The synth channel in particular, and of course the ability to load your own custom samples on the go. So here I'm creating a sample channel just to give you an idea. These are the stock sample sets that are available, Roland drum machines, etc. Let's hear it. 808. So, not exactly high quality. But these are just arbitrary waveforms, just like the synth engine. So they're able to be modified in a lot of different ways. Slow down the speed. when it comes to sample manipulation. Let me stop for a second. So I'm kind of burning through this pretty quick. I just wanted to make sure I covered what the hardware channels were. LSDJ is a particular software. Like I said, Nanoloop and a few others. There's some real-time noise generators that don't have a sequencing type interface at all. There are also MIDI interfaces. MGB is one that is just a MIDI interface. It uses a Arduino-based device to convert standard MIDI into commands that the console can understand. That's a little more than I could bring with me today. Is there anything I've completely glossed over that's not making sense at all before I move on? Okay. So here's another interesting option. When this software started being widely used by experimental artists, they were taking the consoles into a live setting, which hadn't been, even in demo scene days, it wasn't really, it's not like a rock concert or a punk show where you take your Amiga, Sunday to Sunday. Depends on if you're Nathan Blues or what. So one of the first things, or one of the second big innovations in the, especially Nanoloop and LSDJ, were live tools. So this particular save is all in one, is all continuous, but let's take a row out real quick. So you can see up there, I've switched from, this is song mode, which means it just plays continuously from the time you press stop to the time, or from start to stop. In live mode, I can cue individual phrases. Or rows. So with anything that's highlighted like this, I can cue these up, and based on the tempo, they'll all play completely independently of one another. So I don't just have to start at the top, play to the bottom. I can choose individual phrases, trigger them one after another. This is maybe in Ableton world, this would be like clip launching or something like that. And so like here, if I chose this row and queued it up, so that way you can choose, you can completely ignore your original song structure, skip around, mix and match parts. So that gives it a lot more versatility in a live setting rather than just hit start, jump around. Let's see what else we've got. Save wise. Okay, so at the opposite end of the spectrum, this is just a live noise creation tool. No sequencing, no anything like that. Just noise like this. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a stop button. This is my favorite example, but there's a lot of examples like this that are just button mashing, different parameters mapped to buttons. And of course, that depends on your skill to use it and stay in tempo, make it appropriate, etc., which is not my forte. But Pixel Hate, I don't know if you've heard that artist name. He's from the UK. He's made a lot of live, as in hit buttons in real time ROMs, which are all freely available. Let's see what else we got. This is a good one. So this is Music Tech. Basically, with this screen here, you're editing what each of your joypad keys are going to be doing. And then when you move to this screen, that type of thing. Get back to the editor, you have to restart.
So why does it say free version on the title screen? Is there like a...
When Music Tech, all of these say free version, but when he was making these, originally he was intending to have cartridges. Music Tech did make it onto a cartridge. He also made, what's it called, Music Tech, one for the advanced line too. But these that he made available, they say free version, but I don't think there's any difference other than there's no saving capability, nothing like that. They don't even look for SRAM. They're just purely mash buttons. Let's see. These kind of things are really useful and interesting and easy to get a hold of. Easy to get wrap your mind around. But you can see clearly there's far less customizability, and they're just not nearly as deep. This is like a single layer of sound. This drum tech is kind of interesting. It gives you a few. So you've got, another 16-step sequencer. Each step you can set to this selection of predetermined sounds.
So do you run this in the emulator most of the time, or do you do it on hardware?
For me, for performances and recording, I use hardware because it's so small. You know, I can kick back in the lazy boy with it. You know, it's super easy, super portable. Don't have to worry about Windows updates interrupting me in the middle of it. You know, nothing like that. For most recording, I use emulator output. One of the interesting things about BGB is it can actually output it'll output a WAV file for you from the time the audio starts till it stops. And it can either be a mix down or it can be individual channel output. And it's really good. The sound emulation is fantastic. So loading up your save file that you've written over here, which is exactly what's going on. That was one thing I wanted to do, was give you a sound comparison from emulator to hardware. You can see that, or maybe you can see, this particular console, it's had a backlight installed, and also has a clock mod. So this can be, this is a variable clock, but you can take it all the way down to practically frozen up to, I think, double processor speed, which is just for getting different pitch. It is actually changing the processor speed though, so it affects everything. It affects your key input, the refresh rate. So it's of limited use to me here. Okay. All right, so that's actually one of mine. And here on my cart, I have the exact same save file loaded up. I'm gonna pull this audio cable. I don't know if it's gonna. So, exact same thing. And to my ear, most of the time, BGB's emulation is excellent. I can't tell a significant difference. I'll show you the pitch mod here. I don't know if you can see out there, but the refresh rate on the screen is now like totally illegible. And unfortunately, that means key tracking is so far off, forget about it. So you have to stay in a reasonable kind of range. this unit's also had another interesting mod. What I'm actually plugged into now, oh, it wasn't plugged in all the way.
Sorry, I had it turned down.
Okay, that's fine, never mind. You can see I'm not plugged into the original audio jack here. I'm plugged into a bypass jack that skips over the headphone amp because it sounds really bad in comparison. And also is impedance difference, which makes a big difference. This little thing's obviously putting out a lot more signal than my laptop was because the impedance has been changed to more of a line level. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the laptop. I brought a lot of hardware. I wasn't sure what the setup was going to be for this talk, but I brought a lot of hardware examples, cartridge examples, which I guess I'll lay out back there. You all are free to try them out. I got some headphones if you want to fiddle around with any of this stuff. I think I've probably demoed about everything that I had time to cover today. If there's anything anybody wants me to go back over or into a little deeper.
Do you know, has there been work in the emulator community to like make the audio better and more like the hardware? Like, are there specific changes to the emulators that were done because of like people like you using the audio?
I would, yes. I wish I could give some examples of some earlier emulators that didn't even have sound. There weren't even sound, wasn't a consideration for a lot of the early ones because it's like, who cares? You know, I know what the Tetris theme song sounds like. I don't have to hear it 1,000 times. But as
Still plays your game.
Yeah.
But yeah, as music tools like this got more popular and more people were using them, and early flashcards were really difficult to use. They used a big fat serial table, and they were really unreliable. Emulators, one way around that before we got to the level of flashcards that we have now was to use the emulators, and there was a big push to get the audio more authentic. And you know, to keep all the quirks and capabilities and the limitations, and it's really, I don't think hardly anyone can tell the difference now in a blind taste test between something like BGB or there's one for Android called My Old Boy. That's excellent. I don't think you can tell at this level.
I would say if you wanted to set up, there's probably a lot of tables over here.
Oh, okay.
And it's probably better to set it up there.
Cool.
If the noise isn't going to bother you.
No. All right. Yeah, so if anybody's interested in playing with some of my old toys, just hit me up. I'll be.
Or the FOSS room, there are tables set up in there, and there aren't a lot of people. So
Okay.
if that's too big a space, you can always go in there. The crypto party's in there doing, like they're putting their own subtitles. Thank you on movies. So maybe you could collaborate. You know.
New subtitles, new soundtrack.